ever get that feeling? Like you're at work, trying to figure out something new, and it's like, should we plan everything out beforehand or just dive in and kind of like adapt as we go? It's a tough call, right?
It really is. And that's exactly what we're digging into today, this whole idea of, well, we're calling them static and dynamic approaches to work.
Yeah, static versus dynamic. Makes sense.
We've been looking at a bunch of videos, presentations about this,
Yeah.
and trying to get to the bottom of when to use which approach. Like, when does the traditional, really structured way, that waterfall method, actually work?
Right, good old waterfall.
And when do you need something more flexible, something like Agile, to get you through?
Agile. Yeah, that's the buzzword these days for sure.
It's not just about the process, though, is it? It's really about understanding what you're dealing with. What's the task at hand?
Wow.
Is it predictable? Can you define it clearly? Or is it messy,
Yeah.
full of unknowns and likely to change as you go?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, are
Yep.
we building a house of cards? Or are we building, a skyscraper?
And this is becoming even more important with AI coming into the picture. Everything's changing so fast.
AI is like a whole other layer of complexity.
It really is.
Okay, so in this deep dive, what we're aiming for is to give you some clarity, like a framework for deciding, okay, waterfall for this project, agile for that one.
Exactly. To know which tool to use, so to speak.
Tools for your mental toolbox. I like
You got it. And we'll also be looking at how hard something is versus how complex it is, because those are two different things and they both matter when you're choosing your approach.
So difficulty versus complexity. We'll unpack that for sure. But first, let's go back in time a bit. Look at the history of static thinking. Where did this waterfall idea come from?
Well, back in the day, a lot of the problems people tackled were, well, they were simpler, compared to what we face now.
Simpler how?
Like more predictable. Think about building something, literally building with stones, let's say.
Oh, yeah, like in that one video,
Yeah.
the stone building example.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know what you want to build, you know where to get the stones, and you stack them up. There might be amazing craftsmanship involved, sure.
Yeah, like those old cathedrals or pyramids even. Incredible skill.
Yeah, but the end result, that was pretty much clear from the start.
It's like the vision was already there.
Exactly. A beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yeah.
All laid out. And then along comes the industrial age.
Mass production.
Yeah, and this whole idea of repeating the same process over and over to get things done faster, cheaper, that really cemented this mindset of, plan everything up front because you want to get it right on the first try.
Efficiency, efficiency, efficiency.
Right. And mistakes. Those were seen as like failures. Perfection was the goal.
So it's kind of like, if the world is stable and you know what you're doing, then yeah, it makes sense to invest heavily in planning everything up front, right?
Yeah.
Get all the requirements down, make a super detailed plan, and just execute flawlessly.
That's the idea. And it shaped how work itself was structured. You had these specialized roles, separate departments, each handling their own little piece of the puzzle.
Like an assembly line, almost.
Exactly. You break the work down into these neat little boxes, do one after another, hand it off to the next person, and that way you get the right expert involved at the right time.
Right. So it's perfect for project-based work. Stuff with a clear beginning and end. And often it's the same type of project over and over. You can really optimize for that.
Yeah. And you know exactly what you're going to get.
Predictability. That's the key with waterfall, right?
Yeah, that's waterfall in a nutshell. It's all about those fixed inputs at each stage. First, you gather requirements, then you design, you build, you test, you release, and you move in a straight line, no looking back.
So for certain types of work, like making the same component over and over, that's got to be super efficient.
Right. You lower the risk, you control the costs, and you can really get good at those specific tasks.
But here's the thing, right? If you're in a waterfall mindset, you're basically expecting all the big discoveries, all the aha moments to happen before you even start the real work.
During that initial planning phase.
And then if something new comes up, something changes while you're building. That's like a problem.
It throws a wrench in the works, yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
wait, we didn't see this coming. We planned everything so carefully.
Yeah, it challenges the whole premise of get it right the first time. And oh man, I can only imagine the headaches with change requests in a waterfall project, like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Especially with tools like Microsoft Project. It's not just the software, it's the whole mindset. Why are we changing things? We already have the plan.
The plan is sacred.
And documentation. That's like the Holy Scripture. Everything's got to be written down perfectly at the beginning. And then, well, Reality happens, things change, and that documentation, it can get outdated fast.
It's like the map doesn't match the terrain anymore.
Exactly. And there's this other assumption, which is kind of a fallacy, that once the project's done, it's done, like forever.
Like drop the mic, walk away.
But that's just not how most things work, is it? There's always going to be maintenance, updates, improvements, things evolve.
Yeah, software especially, it's never really finished.
So now let's switch gears and look at the other side of the coin, dynamic thinking. And that's where Agile comes in.
Okay, so Agile isn't just a trendy new management style. It's a response to a different kind of challenge, right?
That's right. It's for those situations where you can't plan everything out in advance.
Like where the future is a big question mark.
Yeah, and it's frustrating, for teams being told to make these long-term plans when they know deep down that they're just guessing.
Like writing a screenplay for a movie that hasn't even been filmed yet.
Exactly. And those guesses, they often turn out to be wrong.
Yeah.
You miss deadlines, you go over budget, everyone's unhappy.
It's a recipe for disaster.
And Agile recognizes this. It says, okay, some work is just inherently complex. It's messy. It's going to change as we go.
Embracing the chaos.
Yeah. You're always getting new information. Customer needs shift. The market changes. New tech comes out. You can't predict it all.
Like that website design example from one of the videos. It's so true. The client might know they need a website, but the details, the actual content, the features, that often emerges as they see early designs, give feedback, play around with prototypes.
Right. And with AI changing things so fast, this ability to adapt is even more crucial now.
It's like AI throws everything up in the air.
It really does.
Makes you feel like you're walking a tightrope sometimes.
It can, yeah. But Agile gives you a way to stay balanced.
So how does it do that?
Well, instead of trying to make a perfect plan up front, you work in these small steps. Deliver something, get feedback, adjust course, repeat.
Like little mini experiments almost.
Yeah, exactly. You're working to learn, as they say, and you're delivering value along the way, not just at the very end.
It's a very different mindset from Waterfall, that's for sure.
It is. And it's important to understand that distinction between project work and, building a product or a service.
Right, because projects have a start and an end, a clear timeline. So Waterfall can work well there.
Yeah. But products, services, those are ongoing things. They need to constantly adapt to user feedback, to market changes. Agile is a much better fit for that.
It's like Waterfall's a sprint and Agile is a marathon.
Like that analogy. And it changes how teams are organized, too. Instead of bringing people in for a specific project, you have these stable, cross-functional teams that stick together.
So they really get to know the work and each other.
Exactly. They become like puzzle solvers. They
Okay.
develop this deep understanding of the domain. And that's not just a philosophical thing. It's a necessity. Because this kind of dynamic work requires a different skill set. You need people who are both specialists and generalists.
So they can wear different hats and switch gears quickly.
Exactly. They need that breadth of knowledge, but also the depth of expertise. And they need to be comfortable with change.
Agile is all about embracing change.
And it's about bringing the work to the experts, to those who can actually solve the problems. So instead of being assigned tasks from above, Agile teams pull work based on their strengths, their capacity.
It's more empowering that way.
It is, yeah.
Okay, so when we look at how these different approaches play out in an organization, it's interesting, right? Like with static thinking, waterfall thinking, you often end up with silos.
Silos between departments, yeah.
Okay.
Everyone's in their own little box.
There's separate responsibilities, very rigid roles, and the collaboration often feels more like, throwing things over the fence.
A hot potato approach.
Yeah, exactly. But with dynamic environments, those agile environments, you need more continuity. Those long-lived teams, everyone working together towards a common goal, it's a very different vibe.
It is, yeah.
And the way you plan is different too. Waterfall is all about those big, detailed plans, months, even years in advance.
Right, everything mapped out. But Agile is more about setting a general direction, a roadmap, but with lots of room for flexibility, for adapting as you learn.
And there's this misconception that agile people don't plan, which is just not true, right?
Not at all. You're constantly planning, adjusting, replanning based on what you learn. It's just a different kind of planning.
More like navigating by the stars. You have a destination in mind, but you're always adjusting your course based on the winds and currents.
I like that. It's about responding to the environment.
And that ability to adapt quickly, that's a huge advantage these days. It's almost more important than having the perfect plan from the start.
It is, yeah. Especially with AI changing the game so fast. Organizations that can learn and adapt quickly, those are the ones that will thrive.
It's like AI is a catalyst for disruption. If you're stuck in a static mindset with those rigid structures, you're going to get left behind.
Absolutely. You need to be adaptable. You need to embrace change to really harness the power of AI.
So for organizations that are, trying to make this shift to become more agile, what are some practical steps they can take? The videos we watched didn't really lay out a roadmap, but there are definitely some clues, right?
Yeah, some key things to focus on. Like, first of all, you got to understand your current mindset. Is your organization more about control, predictability, or is it open to change, to experimentation?
Yeah, that's the foundation. You can't build a dynamic structure on a static foundation.
Exactly. And it's also important to recognize that AI is really good at handling those routine, predictable tasks.
So we can automate those and free up humans to focus on the more complex stuff.
That's the idea. And that complex stuff, it often requires a different approach. You need to create spaces for dialogue, for surfacing those hidden assumptions.
Yeah, create a culture of inquiry, of continuous discovery.
And psychological safety is crucial. People need to feel safe to experiment, to make mistakes, to learn.
It's like failure is not the opposite of success, it's part of the journey.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And finally, shorter planning cycles. That's key for dynamic work.
Like iterate, iterate, iterate.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's connect all this back to the idea of refactoring, which came up a lot in the videos we watched. Refactoring, for those who aren't familiar, it's basically improving the internal structure of something you've already built.
Yeah, like cleaning up the code, making it more efficient, more maintainable.
And the way an organization approaches refactoring, that can tell you a lot about their mindset.
It really can. Like in a static environment, refactoring is often seen as a sign of failure.
Like, why didn't we get it right the first time?
Exactly. But in a dynamic environment, it's just part of the process. It's how you learn and improve.
It's embracing the fact that you're going to learn things as you go, and you need to be able to adapt your work based on that new knowledge.
Right. And if you avoid refactoring, especially in a complex environment, that can really cost you down the line.
Yeah, it's like ignoring a small crack in the foundation. Eventually, it's going to become a big problem.
Exactly. And Agile, with its emphasis on early delivery, continuous feedback, that naturally leads to a need for refactoring.
Because you're getting that real-world feedback. You're learning what works and what doesn't, and you need to be able to adjust your course.
And leaders play a big role here. They need to create a culture where refactoring is seen as a positive thing, not a sign of failure.
Celebrate the learning, not punish the mistakes.
Exactly. And even the language we use matters. Instead of saying redo or fix, use words like refine or improve.
Yeah, it's subtle, but it can make a difference. It's about fostering a mindset of continuous improvement.
And the goal isn't perfection, it's adaptability. You want to build something that can evolve as you learn.
So refactoring is a skill, really, a core capability, especially in the age of AI.
It is, yeah.
And there are some practical tips for doing it effectively, like psychological safety, so people feel comfortable speaking up, making small, reversible changes.
Lots of testing,
Yep.
documenting your decisions, and even scheduling dedicated time for refactoring.
Like it's not an afterthought, it's built into the process.
Right. And it helps you avoid that sunk cost fallacy. That feeling of, we've already invested so much we can't change course now.
It's hard to let go sometimes.
It is. But refactoring gives you that flexibility, and it aligns with the core principle of Agile. Continuous learning. You're always learning. You're always adapting.
And with AI, that's more important than ever. Because the technology is changing so fast, our understanding of its implications is evolving. We need to be able to adapt our systems as we learn.
Building for evolution. That's the key.
Okay, so let's talk about teams now. How do these different approaches to work impact how teams are organized? We saw a clear distinction in the videos, right? Between that traditional top-down command and control structure.
Versus self-organizing, self-managing teams.
And those traditional hierarchies, they just don't work well with complexity. They're too slow, too rigid.
They are, yeah. And AI is making those traditional roles even more obsolete, automating all that routine work.
So we need something different. And that's where self-organization comes in, giving the power to the people, so to speak.
Right, pushing decision-making down to those who are closest to the work. But it's not anarchy. It still requires structure, alignment.
Yeah, it's not just like everyone does whatever they want.
It's more about setting clear goals and then giving teams the autonomy to figure out how to achieve them.
And leadership plays a different role. Instead of commanding and controlling, they're enabling and facilitating.
Right. They're providing support, guidance, resources creating the environment for teams to thrive.
And there's a learning curve, of course. One of the videos talked about the Shuhari model.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. First you follow the rules, then you break the rules, then you master the rules.
It's a journey. You don't become self-organizing overnight.
No, you don't. It takes time, it takes practice, and it requires trust. Leaders need to trust their teams to make good decisions.
Give them ownership and the psychological safety to experiment.
Exactly. And, of course, there are challenges. Fear of failure, difficulty learning from mistakes.
Sometimes leaders struggle to let go. They want to micromanage. And sometimes team members resist the added responsibility.
It's a change, for sure. But the benefits are huge.
Yeah.
You get better collaboration, better communication, fewer bottlenecks, and ultimately you get better results.
And then there's self-management, which takes it even further, right?
Yeah, that's like the next level. It's where the traditional manager role really starts to disappear.
It's more about like shared purpose, shared leadership.
Right. And the manager becomes more of a coach, a mentor, someone who helps the team navigate the complexities.
And success is measured by team outcomes, not individual performance.
Right. And retrospectives become super important, taking the time to reflect, to learn from what worked and what didn't.
So it's not that managers go away entirely, it's that their role transforms. And interestingly, self-organization can actually help reduce risk in AI projects. Because you have diverse perspectives, you're experimenting in small steps, you're more likely to catch problems early on.
Right. It's a more resilient approach.
Okay, so one last big idea to unpack here. And it's about the difference between difficulty and complexity. That was a key takeaway from one of the videos.
Yeah, that's a crucial distinction.
So difficulty is about effort. Like, how much energy do you need to expend to get something done? And the outcome is usually pretty predictable.
Like lifting a heavy weight. It's hard, but you know what's going to happen.
Right. But complexity is about, like, interconnectedness. There are all these different factors at play, and the outcome is often unpredictable.
Like driving in rush hour. You might know your destination, but who knows what's going to happen along the way.
Right. Or like that space mission example. Super hard and super complex.
Yeah, both those things matter when you're choosing your approach. Waterfall works for simple, predictable stuff, even if it's hard.
Like building a bridge, it's a huge undertaking, but the process is well-defined.
Right, but Agile is for that messy, complex stuff, where the path forward isn't always clear.
And you got to be careful not to mix them up. Trying to use Agile for something simple or Waterfall for something complex, that's a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely. And AI right now, it's really good at handling those simple tasks, whether they're easy or hard.
So let the robots do that stuff. Let humans focus on the complex, creative work.
That's where we shine.
So always take a step back and ask yourself, is this really complex? Or is it just difficult? And am I using the right approach?
Those are the key questions.
So to wrap things up here, the big takeaway is match the approach to the work. Waterfall for the simple, predictable stuff. Agile for the complex, the unknown.
Exactly. Choose the right tool for the job.
And AI is going to keep pushing us towards that more complex, more creative work. That's the future.
It is, yeah.
So if you're interested in learning more about all this, we'll have links to the videos we talked about in the description below.
Go check them out. Lots of good stuff in there.
Yeah, some real food for thought. And as you go back to your own work, take a moment to think about the approaches you're using. Are they the right fit for the challenges you're facing?
It's always worth asking that question.
Great conversation. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, this was fun.
Until next time, keep learning, keep adapting.